board of directors members from major corporations in the United States, and we did this study. It's online, it's free. You can find links to it in my text. Jody Westby, another distinguished fellow at Scilab, was the principal author, but I helped her with it. And it really revealed a lot of interesting data points. 56% only occasionally or rarely reviewed and approved top-level policies. Top-level policies. Rarely or only occasionally reviewed. 62% of them only occasionally or rarely received reports from senior managers regarding privacy and security risks. That means 62% of them only occasionally or rarely allowed that information security professional to get their 5 minutes in front of them. You can go through these and see for yourself some of the. These are fundamental, very important and useful tools to have a successful enterprise program. Do you have functional separation between privacy, security, and IT management? In other words, are all your privacy, information security, and information privacy issues addressed within IT? Or do they all report within IT to the CEO or under the CEO, or do they have some autonomy so that they can say, no, you really have to deal with this issue. We really have to look at this. 12%. Do you have cross-organizational teams? In other words, do the important people from legal and from security and from human resources and from IT and from audit work together cross-functionally, cross-organizational team to see that where you're going with your enterprise security and risk program and what you need to coordinate better. 73% of them, none of the above. So governance is a big issue, and you could have the best firewalls, you could have the best technology, you could have the best people from Purdue and Carnegie Mellon, and you could give them everything they needed. But if the only way a corporate culture changes is from the top. The only way a corporate culture changes from the top, because a corporation is not a democracy, it's not supposed to be. But a corporation is supposed to be a totalitarian state. Everything flows from the top. So if you change the boardroom, you change a corporation. If you don't change the boardroom, you haven't changed the corporation no matter what. These are some recommendations. Again, it's all in the study, and I commend it to you and its principal author, Jody Westby. And those, my comments and analysis on it are mine, not hers. She's much more diplomatic. So another issue I've been thinking a lot about is the relationship between cybersecurity and sustainability. And how I got here is that during my time with Deloitte, I was with Deloitte for 3 years, and I was Director of Global Security Intelligence. And so my job was really, one part of my job was helping roll out a global security organization, both physical and cyber, for all of Deloitte, which is 100,000 people and over 100,000 people in over 100 countries around the world. And another part of my job was looking at risk, and looking at risk from a security point of view and talking about it. And it was all internal. And so I started to look at the risk matrix, and I think because you're in an academic environment, there's several different risk matrices. There's different methodologies and everything else, and all very useful, don't get me wrong. But somebody asked me one, well, which risk matrix do you use? And this one or that one or this one and that one. I said, well, I use the Zen matrix. I don't really use a matrix. I just try to look at it and see what I see. And when I looked at the nature of risk, I saw that we have, first of all, cybersecurity, as important as it is to us. The top of your list is, nuclear proliferation, pandemics. There's all kinds of things on that list above the problems of cybersecurity. One issue, though, is that as cyber technology becomes more integrated into everything we do, the cybersecurity issues impact all your ability to deal with all those other risks, all the way up the top 10 list of the risks you have, whether you're a government, a family, an individual, or a business. But then when you look at climate change, and you accept that the science, no science is ever settled, but you accept that the science is settled, that there's something happening here, Mr. Jones, and we know what it is, then you have to acknowledge that this threat is going to warp every other threat. Just like cybersecurity issues impact your ability to deal with all the other threats, sustainability issues are going to warp all the other threats, accelerate, accentuate, aggravate many of these other threats. And in and of itself, it's a huge issue. And in climate, we talk about climate change because we talk about climate change or global warming, but really it's sustainability we're talking about. Even if the oceans weren't warming and the poles weren't melting in a way that was not has not happened before on this planet, then you would still have sustainability problems in terms of food, water, and everything else, but it aggravates them. So I was thinking, what does climate change is going to impact all of business. There was a study just came out this week, I think it was either 15% of the GDP, gross product of the world, GDP of the world, or 25% of the GDP of the world could take a hit. We're talking about now the geophysicists are looking at the impact, and I was asking people about this 6 or 7 years ago, and people didn't want to think about it. Now they're looking at the impact. Okay, the oceans are heating up. What's the impact on the crust? And what's the impact on the nature of earthquakes with climate change? This is a huge issue. So what does it have to do with cybersecurity, and what do C-level executives, boards of directors, and information security professionals and information security technologists have to know about it? I talked about this already, about how it warps all of these other issues, aggravates and accentuates and accelerates all of these other things. And there's about another colleague of mine did a report where she analyzed and came up with 7 dimensions of risk through which climate change impacts a corporation: financial, reputational, litigation, products, technology, supply chain, regulatory, and physical. She went through each one of these levels and explored how that would be. Yeah.
Dimension of risk or information security risk?
Risk.
General
risk. Risk, general. This is risk general. This is risk general. But then I took it to this place, and I said to myself, what is the role of cybersecurity? You know, it's funny. You're probably familiar with confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? I have a friend, Don Parker, a very brilliant man, who wrote a whole book about how confidentiality, integrity, and availability is a very limited model of what security is supposed to deliver. Cybersecurity is supposed to deliver, and actually it's about, I think he has one list where it's 5 and one list where it's 10 or 12 things that actually need to be addressed by cybersecurity. But let's just stick with the conventional wisdom of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Most of our efforts have been spent over the last 20 years focusing on confidentiality and integrity. Can we preserve the secrecy of information, keep it from being stolen, or keep it from being changed? Some work has gone into availability, but it has not been the driver. But in a world where energy issues and sustainability issues become paramount, availability, the nature of availability changes completely. For example, if the disaster recovery model, disaster recovery and business continuity are integral, IT is integral to them, and in most organizations, it's usually IT that either drives disaster recovery, business continuity, or as a central player in it, right? So